The next fallacy of relevance we'll examine is the appeal to force. In Latin, that's argumentum ad baculum. Literally, the argument that uses a stick. Basically, any appeal to force uses a threat, either physical or psychological, explicit or implicit, as the grounds of support for the conclusion. In an appeal to force, the arguer is attempting to make us fearful of the consequences of not accepting his or her conclusion. It's as if he or she is saying, agree with me or else. Keep in mind, the threat doesn't have to be physical. It can be economic, social, political, whatever. The bottom line is that it's a consequence that the arguer feels will compel his or her listeners to accept the conclusion. Here's an example of an appeal to force that doesn't rely on overt physical harm. You'll remember Sharp James, the former mayor of Newark, who served a jail sentence for corruption. Here's an attempt at persuasion that might have been made during his tenure. We think it might be a good idea for you city contractors to contribute to the re-election campaign for Mayor Sharp James. Because if you don't, and Mayor James wins, well, you might not get any more contracts. And, we'd hate to see you lose city contracts. So, really, we're just giving you a little bit of friendly advice here. That's all. We're just looking out for you. What's the best way to avoid the appeal to force? First, if you are offered as support for a conclusion the avoidance of unpleasant consequences, you're probably faced with an appeal to force. Logically, we must reject such arguments because force is not a rational means of support for a conclusion. However, from a practical perspective, if someone is holding a knife to your throat, you might wish to acquiesce to the conclusion. Logic is very useful, but only to a point. This concludes this segment of a multi-part lecture on fallacies of relevance. Please proceed to the next segment.